وقل رب زدني علما.
Is post 870. The tafsir only get first written down by a man named Al-Tabari, 923. Now can you see the problem? All they know about Islam with a small I comes from 200 to 300 years later. When you look at Jesus Christ, we have material from the very century and from the very time period he lived. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John were all living at the time of Jesus Christ. Matthew, Mark, and Luke were writing within 30 to 40 years of Christ's death. Did they know Jesus? Yes, they did. Did they see Jesus? Yes, they did. Did they hear what he said? Yes, they did. Matthew and John were eyewitnesses to that which they wrote. Mark and Luke got it from the eyewitnesses. Show me one eyewitness of Muhammad from any of his traditions, from what he said and what he did. You cannot show me anybody that was living at that time. They lived hundreds of years later and hundreds of miles away. Therefore, I would suggest the Islam, the big I Islam of history is not the real Islam. And we need to go back and unpack what we do now know about Islam. Where is it that this religion began? I only have a minute to do that. I can't do it in the first minute. But can you see, we're going to do life with life. We're going to look at the historical record for both religions. We're going to show that when you look at Christianity, when you look at the person of Jesus Christ, the fact that he died on the cross, something that Islam disputes, the fact that he rose again, that's what true Christians believe. Every Christian wants to know, did God, in the form of Jesus Christ, did he die and rise again? Is that a historical fact? Can we show that Jesus did die? Muslims can't do that. Muslims can only assume he did not die. There's only one reference in the Quran, Surah 4, Ayah 157. One reference to say he did not die. If he did not die and rise again, I'm dead. And so is everybody here who's listening to me. Christianity is not just the Trinity like he would like to say. Christianity is the fact that God came to earth, God died on the cross, God rose again for everyone here, and that's a historical event. What Muhammad did, what Muhammad said, we're now seeing is not historical. We're going to unpack that for you and show you what we mean. And we're going to show you how difficult it is going to be for Muhammad to show me that Islam, the big I, the real historical Islam, is the real Islam. We're going to show you the big C, Christianity. There is only one Christianity, and that's the historical Christianity. God bless you. Let them decide that.
Which is the Quran?
This is going to be really embarrassing.
لا تستطيع أن تتكلم باللغة العربية الفصحى. هل تستطيع أن تتحدث باللغة العربية الفصحى؟ لا.
That's point number one. Point number two here is what I wanted to make. Can you hear me, guys? Yeah? Is that he is making the fallacy of believing that because the compilers compiled the Hadith 200 to 300 years after the Prophet's death, that the Hadith didn't exist before that. How embarrassing. How ridiculous. How ahistorical. Do you not know how the science of Hadith works according to the Muslims? You've been standing here for years, my friend, and you haven't bothered to ask someone like me how science of Hadith works. Let me educate you. I know you're my elder, but I must educate you today. Yes, it will happen. You'll be educated, Jay Smith, by someone who is at least a third of your age. At least, actually, maybe not that way. Okay, how so? Let me tell you something. The way the chains work, we have a chain. We have a chain for the Quran, we have many chains for the Quran, we have chains for the Hadith. All of those chains are for people that have actually met the Prophet, seen the Prophet. Let me give you one example. One hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which says, "Man kadaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu min an-nar." Whoever lies about me intentionally, so let him prepare to seat in hellfire. This is narrated by at least 42 Sahabis, according to the scholars of Hadith. Some scholars of Hadith say 120 Sahabis, meaning companions of the Prophet, saw this and narrated it to other people. He's embarrassing himself, additionally, by trying to compare the Hadith sciences, which is something he doesn't have, with the biblical narrative. Now let's read the book of Bar-Arman. He said that the people that saw Jesus Christ, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, saw Jesus Christ. Not in scholarly circles. You can say that to your audiences, to your passive audience that are not educated maybe, to the rednecks in the Bible Belt region who are racist, some of them, and they just accept any preacher's words. Maybe you can make those statements there. But my friend, you can't make those statements to an educated audience who know very well that the scholarly works like the works of Bar-Arman indicate very well.
The
scholarly works of Bar-Arman, those scholarly works indicate very clearly, guys, that Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, first of all, were pen names. We don't know who these guys are. The actual earliest sources are sources like Matthew, Mark and Luke. John is the oldest one according to Bar-Arman, and these sources come, as he said, about 100 years after Jesus Christ. No one saw Jesus and told us about him from the people that he's mentioned. He's lying to you, as he does usually, and he's been caught on camera talking about there's no pork being sold in Morrison's. That's a lie, and this is a lie, and that's an ahistorical account. So here, how can you account for the fact that you're standing here in front of me, and the people here, your Christian friends, are telling us, you're telling us all to believe in a Bible which is not reliably transmitted? No, I challenge you. I challenge you to give me one chain of narration which goes back to the companions of Jesus. If you do the same to me, I will easily do it. In fact, let's do it now. We have chains of narration. For example, Asim, he's been taught by Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami, he's been taught by Uthman, he's been taught by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. One chain. Okay, do the same thing. Now I've shown you that this is just one singular chain, but actually you have thousands of Sahaba, of companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, meeting him and writing down as well as verbally transmitting what he's done. How do you account for that, my friend? You can't read the primary source materials. I have to be the translating link that helps you. Don't stand there in a position of education. You're there in a position of learning now. You're there in a position of learning now. The child is going to teach the old man. No problem. The child is going to teach the old man because he don't know what I know. And that's the bottom line. Challenge one. Get me a chain. Get me a chain that goes back to Jesus Christ. A chain of provenance that goes back to Jesus Christ. Option two. After you've given me the chain, if you can't get me the chain, then admit that actually the first person to see the first compilation we have by at least 100 years afterwards. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, I love what he's done. You notice he said the young man's going to teach the old man. I am the older man, and I do know what we're talking about. Let me ask him very quickly, where is this chain that he talks about? Where is there any document? He said they wrote them down. Where are those documents? From the time of Muhammad through the 7th century, up into the 8th century, and into the 9th century. Why is it we don't have anything written down for 200 years? If he likes the chain so much, show me one piece of document. Show me. Where are they? They don't begin to appear until 833. That's why I said very clearly, the earliest manuscripts that we have, the earliest documentation we have for the Siratul Rasulullah, the first that we have is Ibn Hisham. He gets it from Ibn Ishaq, but he is not a student of Ibn Ishaq. He's dependent on someone else. Where did Al-Bukhari, writing in the late 9th century, 240 years later, where did he get his material from? There's nothing written down. Now you might say they didn't need to write it down. They memorized it. Folks, can you see what we're talking about? That's 240 years of oral tradition. Do you trust oral tradition? Yes. I don't trust it. If I were to tell you something, and he were to tell him, and he were to tell him, by the time it gets over to that man, what I told you and what he's told me has been changed. And if that could happen in 15 minutes, can you imagine what happens in 240 minutes, 40 years? But here's the real problem. Why did none of these people write it down? the chain that he's going to come up with. Why did not one of them write it down? Were they not educated? Was there no writing material? Remember, by the time that Abdul Malik comes to power in 685, Islam had spread all the way from Spain in the west to India in the east. Are you telling me that from India to Spain, no one can read and write? Please, folks, the fact that nothing was written down, the fact that they cannot even come to anything that they can show us from the 7th century, from the 8th century of any of these traditions, proves that these were finally written down in the 9th century. And that's why we don't trust them. I don't trust oral tradition because I know how it can be embellished. I can know how it can be changed. We can even look at the Quran. Show me one Quran that comes from the 7th century. Show me one Quran that comes from the time of Uthman. Show me any manuscript, the Topkapi, the Samarkand, the Mail manuscript, the Husseini manuscript, the Petropolitanus manuscript, the Sana manuscript, the 6 major manuscripts. Show me one of them that comes from the time of the Prophet himself, or that comes from the time of Uthman, that even comes from the same century as the time of Uthman, the 7th century. Folks, every one of these major manuscripts, the earliest that the Muslims have, only begin to appear in the 8th century. Now there's a problem there. We're talking about the 8th century. I know he loves to mock me. This is the only thing he can do. Mock is the only thing he has left. Because he cannot come up with anything, any material to prove to you and me that the Quran or the traditions existed at the time of Muhammad, or existed in the same time as Muhammad. Now I won't do this to him because I'm too big for that. But see, can you see the problem? Be careful of what you're going to hear. Be careful of who you're listening to. He will tell you that these change of names are there. Yes, and that's all they are. They're nothing more than change of names. History is what we're looking at today. And the Islam with the big I, the Islam of history, has to be documented. The fact that we can go back to the Bodmer Papyrus, the John Ryan's manuscripts, these are right here in Manchester, and also we have them in Switzerland. These are the kind of documents that we can go back. The fact that we can go to the Chester Beatty manuscripts. The fact that we can go to all the manuscripts. We have 365 manuscripts of the New Testament alone that begin to appear even before Islam came onto the world stage. Therefore, why is it Islam can't even come up with one document of their Quran from the 7th century? Mock me as you want to, Muhammad, but you've got to come up with some better material than that. Don't give me oral tradition. Don't give me speculation. Show me a manuscript that you can prove that sits at the same time that Muhammad lived, the same time that Uthman lived, and I can show you that we can beat you by hundreds of years. I thank God for the Bible, and I thank God for His tradition, and I thank God for those people who talk about Him, and I thank God that we can show that Christianity is historical. Prove it to me now. I'm not going to mock you like you mocked me. I'm going to let you now speak. Freely. Go ahead.
I'm a young man. Let me have my fun. All right. Now you made a challenge. I'm going to meet your challenge unlike you, because people would have realized now that I have quoted scholars like Bar Ehrman, who have written scholarly books, who have made it very patently clear to people like yourself, who believe that actually the earliest manuscripts of the Bible are the ones I've mentioned. L source, M source, Q source, Matthew, Mark, Luke. John is old. Now these sources come about, as he's mentioned and admitted today, about 100 years after the Bible. Now, after Jesus. Having said that, let me meet his challenge. He says, why is it the case that you don't find that the Quran, first of all, and the Hadith, obviously supplementary to the Quran, has been written down? Wait a minute. What a lie that is. What a lie that is. Let's start with the Quran, since it's higher. Ibn al-Jazari mentions in Tayyibatul Nashr, which I'm sure you don't know what that is. It's a book, a scholarly book written. He says that there are 3 conditions for a Quran to be accepted. Condition number 1, it must be memorized and there must be an oral transmission as it alludes. Condition number 2, it has to be concurrent with the Arabic language. Condition number 3, there must be something written as well. These conditions are all met with the manuscript of the Quran. which is why you will find no doubt. Which is why you will find no doubt that the Masahif or the books of the Quran, which are in Turkey and in Sana'a, in Yemen, yes, they do go back to the time of Uthman in 651. And they are radiocarbon dated to a degree of 99.9%. 99.9% refute me today. There is a written book of the Quran as well as the chain, as well as its concurrency with the Arabic language. That's what we're bringing forward today. We're not coming here to say that the Quran is merely but memorized. No, there is a written Quran, and it's there for everybody to see. In fact, there's more than one. Point number one. As for the Hadith, there are written Hadith as well. What are you talking about? No doubt there are written Hadith. In fact, so much Hadith is written that it becomes a condition of the acceptance of Hadith for the person who is able to write the Hadith when you have what is called dabt. Dabt is either you have good memory and or you can write well. So the one who's writing the Hadith and is transmitting it has to be able to write properly. This is a condition of Mustalah al-Hadith. Having said that, the companions of the Prophet wrote the Hadith and he was instructed, the Prophet instructed them, as is in the authentic Hadith, not to write it in Mecca, but then in Medina when the injunctions came down, he told them to write it, which is why you'll find the Qadim of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he wrote the Hadith down, they were written down. This is why, when, I'm sorry to say, but someone who's not acquainted with the primary source, primary language of Islam, when they come to the Quranic and Islamic discourse, they fumble because they see in their mind, okay, the first hadith book is or it's, for example, Al-Bukhari. But wait a minute, does the fact that it's the first compilation mean that the actual hadith was not before? How humiliating! How humiliating! That's absolutely not necessary and absolutely not true. I've explained to you how and why. Moreover now, how could you, from your position of Christianity, someone whose manuscripts have literally been changed hundreds of thousands of times according to Quranic, there are more inconsistencies in the Bible than words in the Bible. There are 400,000 words in the Bible. There are more inconsistencies, there's more variances in the Bible than words in the Bible. According to Quranic, 97%, wait a minute, 97% of the manuscripts have been found of the Bible are after the 9th century, which is 2 centuries after Prophet Muhammad. So your Bible, 97% of the manuscripts comes after our Quran. How dare you stand there and talk to us about scriptural integrity? How dare you, my friend? No way, no way, no way. This is not acceptable. We will not accept that. You have completely humiliated yourself today, Jay Smith. You have embarrassed yourself. How dare you? I mean, how embarrassing that is. Today, get me a chain. That's the challenge. A chain with the book that goes back to Jesus. We're ready to accept Christianity today. Let's do it. Get me the chain. Where's the book? Don't talk to me about scriptural integrity when you have none and you have no documents to back up your claims. Jay, go ahead.
This is going to be fun. All right, let's go and let's just unpack each one of the major manuscripts that he's not aware of. The Topkapi manuscript. When was it written? See, he says it's been written by Uthman. Let's look and see what the Muslim scholars are saying today. Dr. Tayyip Atakulic, Dr. Ekmel Nisanalu, your leading scholars in Islam, they have now looked at the 6 major manuscripts from 2002 to 2007, over 5 years. They are the only ones that have looked at all of these 6 major manuscripts. They've looked at the Topkapi. What are they now saying? This is from the mid-8th century. That's 100 years after Uthman. It only had 78 to 99%, depending on how much you want it, which one you're going to quote, of the Quran that is readable today. But even in the Quran that is readable today, there are 2,230 manuscript variants from the Quran that we use today, the Hafs Quran. 2,230 manuscript variants. That words or phrases that are different than the Quran we use today. 2,270. Thanks for correcting me. Let's look at the Topkapi. Sorry, let's look at the Samarkand in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. That only goes up to Surah 43. There's 114 surahs in the Quran. Much of the Quran is missing. What's more, Dr. Tayyip Atakulic says, When you look at this manuscript, it is so full of errors, it has so many grammatical mistakes, it's an embarrassment. Whoever wrote it did not know very good Arabic. Don't use it. It is from the early 8th century, 60 to 70 years after Uthman. Let's go to the Husseini manuscript in Cairo. That's from the 9th century. That's 200 years later. It has 8 manuscript variants. Let's go to the Mayan manuscript right here in the British Library. That only goes up to Surah 43. But you didn't know that, did you? Because Muslims refuse to look at the newest research. Keep up with the newest research by your own scholars. Bart Ehrman has never done any material on the Quran. Now let's see what it has. Let's go to the Sana manuscript that you love so much. The Sana manuscript has many different small pieces. The largest piece of it only is 23% of the Quran. And in that 23%, it has 93 manuscript variants. It is dated to 705, but that's only part of it. Much of it also is dated at a later part, at a later date. The Petropolitan, I'm sorry, that's the Petropolitanist manuscript. Can you see, folks? 6 major manuscripts. They are all from the 8th century. Not one of them's from the 7th century. Not one of them is complete. Not one of them agrees with each other. And not one of them agrees completely with the Quran that we have today. So when was your Quran canonized? When was the Quran that we have today finalized? In 1924 at Al-Azhar University by a bunch of scholars 93 years ago. What's his name? Prince Philip is older than your Quran. And that's why you need to look at the historical evidence. Don't come to me with platitudes. But did you notice he still hasn't come up with any manuscripts that are existing today for the Hadith prior to 833? He cannot come up with anything prior to 833. Even the one that he's going to come up with for Al-Bukhari is not from 870. It is from the 11th century. The earliest manuscript we have is from the 11th century. We have nothing even from the time of Al-Bukhari. So be careful what he's going to say. I'm not going to sit and mock him as he talks like he does with me. I'm just going to ask every one of you to realize that history is now catching up with Islam and with the Quran. He said that the Sana manuscript has been carbon dated. Yes, it has. Look at the dates of the carbon dating that's coming now out of Toulouse, that's coming out of New York, that's coming out of Arizona at the carbon dating labs. The carbon dates for those manuscripts go back to 443 AD. Muhammad was born in 570 AD. That's over 100 years before Muhammad. What are you going to do with that? Be careful the claims you make. And if you're going to use Bart Ehrman, for heaven's sakes, that's laughable. Bart Ehrman has been destroyed by most of the reputable Christian scholars today. He does not know his material. He does not know his craft. I would rather you would go back to the Muslim scholars. Go back to Dr. Alta Coolidge. Go to Dr. Ekbiluddin Ihsanalu. Go back to the men who know their craft, who have seen the material, who have looked at it, and who have also come up with their conclusions. Thank God we've done that with our Bible. I'll show you what we have in the next 5 minutes concerning what we have for our Bible versus what you have for your Quran. Jesus.
Hey. Listen to me. This is, I'm telling you, the most outrageous claim. The first thing you said was that I don't know what the dates you gave. If you go to any reputable search or any kind of, anyone who knows anything, when is the Sana'a manuscript dated until 651, which is the time of Uthman al-Affan? How do we know that? Because Uthman al-Affan came around in that time. That's when it was canonized for the second time. There was a first canonization at the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, when Zayd ibn Thabit did the first canonization, and then the second one. As for the variants that he's talking about, that's a lie. There isn't 2,700 variants. What he's talking about is their tajweed. Now I'll tell you what we mean. Just in a very simple way. Say for example, if I say for example a word and another word, sometimes you have something called four harakat, yeah? So I make a med for four harakat, like that. His variant is basically, if I say like that he considers a variant. This is not what we're talking about. If you look at the variants that actually changes the meaning, there are few numbers, and they are justified by the fact that the Prophet Muhammad has revelation of 7 ahruf. Now let me ask you a very simple question. What is the difference between a harf and a qira'ah? Since you know now your stuff and you've been reading your stuff, and I'm sure you know all the things. In your opinion, what's the difference between a harf and a qira'ah? But if you don't know what harf is, and you don't know what a qira'ah is, the qira'ahs have ahruf differences, and these differences go back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ with all changed and they've all been written down. So it's not going to be memorized. A lie and false. For example, let me give you an easy example. If you've got Malik and Malik, Malik is repeated in the Quran is 10 qira'at. 6 of those qira'at have Malik and 4 of them have Malik. 4 of them have Malik. So you have 2 differences represented over 10 different qira'at. These 2 differences go back to the Prophet Muhammad through a chain and through the written Quran. That was to facilitate for different tribes, and they do have different meaning. We've made this very clear. Now, 2,000, that's a number which cannot be justified. We'll never be able to prove it. Third point, he's saying that I've not been able to bring any evidences for the hadith. I say generally, that's completely right. The thing is, like the mustalahat or the terminological expressions he used, sometimes it's just named after the Sahabi, Ibn Mas'ud, Abu Hurairah. All of these individuals, they wrote the hadith down. So we say the suhuf or the writings of, and then we say the name of the Sahabi. And these things are still available with us. So for you to say it's not been written is nothing but a lie. It's not true. You cannot substantiate that. You have to disprove what I've just said. You say, no, actually Abu Hurairah and the Khadim of Abu Hurairah didn't write anything down. You have to say that the Sahaba didn't write it, that these manuscripts I'm telling you of not the hadith don't exist. You have to say that. But you'll never be able to make that claim, because that claim would be nothing but falsehood. Now, having defended Islam, let's go back to Christianity. Because it seems to me like you have not answered the question of where is the provenance, the chain of provenance that goes back to Jesus Christ. Where is the person, or where are the people that have seen Jesus Christ? Where is the Bible anyways? Why is 97% of the Bible, according to Bart Ehrman, manuscripts that came after the 9th century? Answer the questions. These are questions. I've answered your question. Now it's time for you to answer my question. This is how people reach true conclusions. You bring your claims, I bring my claims, you ask your questions, I ask my questions. I answer yours, now it's time for you to answer mine. Where are the manuscripts? Where is the Bible? Where is the original Bible? Who saw Jesus? This is my question. Give me an answer. Why are there so many variants which have theological implications that are different to each other, contradictory to each other? I dare you today to find one variant which goes back to the Prophet Muhammad which contradicts each other. I can find you a dozen that has theological implications that contradict each other in the Bible. How can you explain the fact that the church had a creed of judgment? 325, 342, 381, 451. All of these times have shown that nothing but change. They've changed time and time again. My question to you, Jay Smith, is how comes you're believing a Christianity which has been developed after Jesus in 381 with Theodosius, when he forced the people to only accept the triune understanding of Jesus? Where is this in the Bible? Where is it in your Testament that the Holy Spirit is God? Your theology is built on nothing. Your theology is...